I canceled a $28 million luxury development with one sentence and bankrupted the HOA president who tried to steal my dead grandmother's ranch. Would you risk losing everything to protect your family's legacy? When I slammed my grandmother's 1952 mineral rights agreement onto Catherine Prescott's desk, her perfect smile vanished. Your entire neighborhood is built on fraud, I said, as her board members panicked. For years, Silver Lake's HOA had bullied ranchers into selling cheap. But they forgot one thing. My grandmother spent decades documenting their lies. By sunrise, bulldozers halted, mortgages froze, and 120 families armed with pitchforks joined my war. This is how I trapped a dictator in her own web and why she'll never own a home again. When Grandma Eleanor died last spring, I inherited her 500-acre ranch outside Pine Valley. The old place had been in our family for generations. I lived 3 states away, running my own business that kept me from visiting as often as I should have. My phone rang at 7:15 a.m. on a Thursday. It was Mr. Callahan, Grandma's ranch manager for 30 years. They're selling off the south pastures. His voice trembled with anger. Big construction equipment arrived yesterday. You need to come quick. At first, I thought he was mistaken. Maybe surveyors had crossed a boundary line by accident, but Mr. Callahan wasn't one for exaggeration. The Silver Lakes people put up signs all over, he said. They're planning a whole golf course community where your cattle used. I booked the first flight I could find and was on my way to Pine Valley, breaking speed limits from the airport the whole way. 3 hours later, I turned onto the long gravel road leading to Grandma's ranch house. The familiar drive felt different now. The peaceful countryside was interrupted by the rumble of heavy machinery. Dust clouds rose above the trees as I crested the hill overlooking the southern section of the property. My heart sank. A fleet of bulldozers and excavators tore into the soil, where Grandma's prized Herefords used to graze. Workers in hard hats moved around like ants, marking areas with bright orange spray paint. A large sign stood near the road, future home of Silver Lakes Estates, luxury living from the $800,000. I parked my truck and walked toward a woman standing apart from the workers. She wore a crisp navy pantsuit despite the dusty surroundings. Her hair was perfectly styled, and she clutched an iPad while talking on her phone. Excuse me, I said when she finished her call. What's happening here? She looked me up and down like I was a lost delivery driver interrupting her day. We're preparing for the new Silver Lakes expansion. Her voice was practiced and smooth. Catherine Prescott, Silver Lakes Homeowners Association president. She extended her hand without warmth. This is my land, I said, ignoring her handshake. My grandmother Eleanor Matthews owned this ranch. She passed away recently, and I inherited it. Catherine's smile didn't reach her eyes. There must be some misunderstanding. Silver Lakes acquired this parcel last year. We have all the necessary permits and approvals. That's impossible. My grandmother would never sell this land. Perhaps she didn't tell you. She sounded almost condescending. The transaction was finalized 8 months ago. We've been planning this expansion for years. My mind raced. Grandma had been in declining health during her final months, but her mind remained sharp. She wouldn't have sold her beloved ranch without telling me. Something wasn't right. I need to see those documents, I demanded. You're welcome to contact our legal department. Catherine handed me a business card. But I assure you everything is in order. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have a construction schedule to maintain. She turned away, already typing something on her iPad. I stood there, feeling helpless as machines continued to tear up the soil that had been in my family for generations. Back at the ranch house, Mr. Callahan waited on the front porch with a thermos of coffee and a worried expression. They started showing up with surveying equipment about 2 months ago, he explained. Your grandma was furious. She kept saying they had no right, that they were trying to steal what wasn't theirs. Did she mention selling any land? I asked. Never. Eleanor would rather cut off her arm than sell an inch of this place. Mr. Callahan's eyes watered. The weekend before she went to the hospital that last time, she was digging through her old office. Said she needed to find something important to protect the ranch. Grandma's office remained untouched since her death. I hadn't had the heart to go through her things when I briefly visited for the funeral. Now I needed answers. The small room smelled of leather and old books. Shelves lined the walls, stuffed with ranch ledgers, family photo albums, and decades of careful records. Grandma tracked everything: rainfall amounts, cattle births, equipment repairs, all written in her neat handwriting. Where would she have kept property records? The filing cabinet seemed the obvious place to start. I pulled open the top drawer and found folders organized by year. Nothing about land sales or Silver Lakes. Hours passed as I searched. Night fell, and my eyes grew tired from reading faded documents by lamplight. Just as I was about to give up, I noticed a loose floorboard under the desk. When I pressed it with my foot, it moved slightly. I knelt down and pried it open with a letter opener. Inside the small hidden space was a metal box. The key hung from a nail on the underside of the desk. Inside the box, I found the deed to the ranch, Grandma's will naming me as her heir, and several yellowed mineral rights agreements for the property. But most interesting was a letter addressed to me in Grandma's handwriting. "If you're reading this," it began, "then someone's trying to take what's ours." My hands shook as I read her words. Grandma explained that developers had been eyeing her land for years. They'd tried to pressure her into selling, but she always refused. In her final months, someone from Silver Lakes visited repeatedly, claiming to need a simple signature for a water access agreement, bringing different papers each time. "I never signed away my land," Grandma wrote. "If they say I did, it's a lie. Look at the mineral rights agreement from 1952 and compare it to what's recorded at the county now. Truth is in the details." I dug deeper into the box and found the original agreement. It showed that our family had retained exclusive mineral rights across the entire property, including oil, natural gas, and water rights. According to this document, these rights were inseparable from land ownership. Sleep evaded me that night. I spread the papers across the kitchen table, comparing the old agreements with newer documents. Something strange had happened over the decades. The mineral rights clause had been altered in county records, removing the water rights portion, which effectively allowed the land to be subdivided. This wasn't just about the acres under construction. According to these original documents, we owned complete mineral rights, where the existing Silver Lakes development already stood. At dawn, I knew what I had to do. First, I needed a lawyer. Then, I needed to understand exactly what Catherine Prescott and her HOA were up to. If they thought they could steal from my family, they were about to learn a painful lesson. I folded Grandma's letter and put it in my pocket. "I won't let you down," I whispered to the empty room. Little did Catherine know, she hadn't just messed with a grieving grandchild. She'd walked straight into a trap set by a woman who'd anticipated her moves even from the grave. I didn't sleep that night. By 8 a.m., I waited outside the office of Michael Stevenson, the best property rights attorney in Pine Valley. His secretary looked surprised when I asked for an emergency appointment, but she squeezed me in before lunch. "So you believe Silver Lakes is building on land that belongs to you?" Michael said after I explained my situation. He was younger than I expected, with a reputation for taking on big developers. I spread the documents across his desk. "These are the original mineral rights agreements from 1952. Compare them to the current county record." Michael studied both sets of papers, examining the clauses with a magnifying glass. His eyebrows rose higher with each passing minute. "This is highly irregular," he finally said. "According to these original documents, your family retained exclusive mineral rights to everything below ground. That includes water rights. And without water rights, they can't legally develop residential housing. That would include not just the construction site, but potentially the entire Silver Lakes community built over the past decade." I finished for him. Michael removed his glasses and rubbed his temples. "A mineral rights dispute of this magnitude won't be simple. We need to understand how and when these changes occurred in the official record." He called the county recorder's office, putting the call on speaker. After navigating a maze of departments, we learned something shocking. In 1985, a minor clarification to the mineral rights was recorded, just a standard renewal. But in 2002, a major modification appeared, separating water rights from other mineral rights. The documentation was sparse, just a form with a signature that barely resembled Grandma's. She would have been traveling in Europe that month. I said, checking the date, celebrating her retirement. "She couldn't have signed this." Michael's expression turned grave. "That would constitute fraud, but proving it after all these years won't be easy." "What can we do?" I asked. "File for an emergency injunction to halt construction immediately. Then petition the court to recognize the original mineral rights agreements based on the historic documents. We'll need a forensic document examiner to verify these old agreements and your grandmother's signatures." As Michael prepared the emergency filing, I realized I needed more ammunition. I drove to the county records office and requested everything they had on the Silver Lakes Development Company. Hours later, hidden in a back corner of the library with stacks of public records, I discovered gold. Silver Lakes wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a complex web of LLCs and holding companies. The same 7 names appeared throughout: Catherine Prescott, her husband James Prescott, County Commissioner Walter Davis, Planning Board Director Eliza Wilson, and 3 others I didn't recognize. But the most interesting document was from just 2 months ago, a loan approval for $28 million to finance Silver Lake's estates, with the mineral and water rights themselves listed as collateral. My mineral rights. I took photos of everything with my phone and headed to my next stop, the offices of the Pine Valley Chronicle, our local newspaper. The editor, Ryan Williams, had known my grandmother. When I told him I was investigating potential fraud involving prominent local officials, his journalistic instincts perked up. "I can't publish accusations without evidence," he warned, "but I can look into the approval process for this development." It did seem to move unusually fast. Back at the ranch house, I found Mr. Callahan talking to another longtime ranch hand, Bill Jackson. When I mentioned Catherine Prescott, his face darkened. That woman is the reason I sold my place," he said bitterly. "The HOA fined me every month for having agricultural equipment visible from the road. I'd been farming that land for 30 years. Then they said my barn violated some code they just invented. The fines kept coming until I couldn't afford to fight anymore." How many others did this happen to? At least 15 ranchers sold out in the last decade, always for less than market value, always to companies I later found out were connected to those Silver Lakes people. A pattern emerged: find neighboring landowners, harass them with regulations, force them to sell cheap, develop the land, and make millions. My grandmother had been their latest target, but she'd been one step ahead. My phone rang. It was Michael Stevenson. "The judge granted our emergency injunction. Construction has to stop immediately until a hearing next week. But brace yourself. This is going to get ugly." I thanked him and hung up, feeling a small victory. I drove back to the construction site with the court order in hand. Workers were packing up for the day when I arrived. Catherine's black Range Rover still sat near the site office. She came out as I approached, phone to her ear as usual. When she saw me, her expression hardened. "Construction stops now," I said, handing her the court order. "Mineral rights are in dispute." She scanned the document, her perfect composure cracking slightly. "This is ridiculous. We have every approval we need based on fraudulent documents. I have the original agreement." For the first time, uncertainty flashed in her eyes. It vanished quickly, replaced by cold determination. "This little stunt will cost you," she said quietly. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Actually, I do. 7 names on dozens of business filings, $28 million in loans, using stolen mineral rights as collateral, county officials fast-tracking approvals for projects they secretly invested. I hadn't planned to reveal how much I knew, but the look on her face was worth it. Catherine's perfectly manicured hand tightened around her phone until her knuckles turned white. "You're making a mistake," she hissed. "We can be reasonable. Perhaps you'd consider a generous offer for the remaining ranch land. 8 figures, immediate payment." "Not interested. This has been in my family for 4 generations. It's not for sale." I turned to leave, feeling her eyes burning into my back. As I reached my truck, she called out, "Commissioner Davis is my husband's poker buddy. Judge Reynolds vacations at our Lake Tahoe house. You think your injunction will last? You're nobody in this." I drove away, her words echoing in my mind. She was right about one thing: I was an outsider here now. But she'd overlooked something important. Grandma hadn't been. She'd lived in Pine Valley her entire life, knew everyone, and was respected even by those who disagreed with her. And she'd left me more than just. Back at the ranch house, I returned to her office. If Grandma had anticipated this fight, what else had she prepared? I searched more carefully, examining every folder, every notebook. In an album labeled County Fair 2019, I found dozens of photos of Grandma with neighbors, local business owners, and families who'd known her forever. Each photo had names written on the back. These weren't just memories, they were connections, people who might stand with me against Silver. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Property violation on your land. Fine $2,500. Silver Lake's HOA environmental compliance." Attached was a photo of my truck parked at Grandma's ranch. My own property. This was how it started. The pattern Bill Jackson had described. Harassment by regulation. But unlike the others, I knew their game now and had something they didn't expect. Grandma's secret weapon was still hidden in her files, waiting for the right moment. As night fell over the ranch, I sat on the porch where Grandma used to tell me stories during summer visits. The southern pastures lay quiet now, construction equipment abandoned under the court order. But this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, Catherine would mobilize her connections. The real fight was coming. What she didn't realize was that I'd found more than just mineral rights agreements in Grandma's hidden box. I'd found documents that didn't just question the modifications. They revealed who had falsified them, when, and why. Catherine thought she was dealing with an absent grandchild fighting for sentimental land. She had no idea she was facing the ghost of my grandmother, who documented every suspicious deal and approval for years, patiently building a case while they thought she was just a stubborn old rancher. The trap was set. All I had to do was let them walk further in. My heart pounded as I pushed open the glass doors of the Silver Lakes clubhouse. Tonight was the night I'd been planning for weeks. Inside, nearly 100 people filled rows of folding chairs, chatting excitedly about new golf courses and luxury amenities while sipping champagne from fluted glasses. At the front, Catherine Prescott stood tall in her designer suit, pointing at colorful renderings of mansions on a screen. "Just pools with mountain views," she said, smiling wide at the crowd. "Our property values will double once these new estates are completed." People clapped. A few whistled. Nobody knew what I carried in my folder would destroy their party. I took a deep breath and walked straight down the center. "Excuse me," I said loud enough to make heads turn. "I need to speak about this development." Catherine's dropped for a second, then returned, faker than before. "We'll take questions after the presentation. This can't wait," I replied, stepping onto the small stage. I faced the curious crowd. "My name is Morgan Matthews. My grandmother owned Evergreen Ranch for 60 years, the old property we purchased." Catherine cut in. Yes, we're very grateful to finally develop that eyesore." Murmurs rippled through. I opened my folder and pulled out the first document. "This is the original mineral rights agreement from 1952, I said, holding it up. "And this is the fraudulently modified agreement from 2002. I held up another. "According to these legal documents, my family retained exclusive mineral and water rights to all land in this area." I turned to face the HOA board members, seated in a row behind the podium. I placed copies in front of each of them. "Put simply," I continued, "you're building on land where you don't own the water rights. And without water rights, you can't legally sell homes, and not just the new development. According to these agreements, every existing home in Silver Lakes was built and sold without proper water rights too." The room exploded with voices. People stood up. Someone knocked over a chair. "This is absurd," Catherine shouted, grabbing one of the agreements. "We have permits. We've sold properties. Construction has already started." I stayed calm while she grew redder. "Your permits are based on fraudulently modified documents. I filed papers with the court to invalidate all transfers immediately." Robert Green, a serious man with wire-rimmed glasses who served as the HOA legal counsel, studied the documents with growing alarm. "Catherine," he whispered loudly enough for the microphone to catch, "these signature comparisons are damning. The forensic report looks legitimate." She yanked the papers from his hands. "This is clearly some kind of trick to get money from us. We'll fight this nonsense." "You're welcome to try," I replied, pulling out one final document. "But here's something you should know. According to the County Water Authority regulations, your personal house, Catherine, sits on land where you don't legally own the water rights, meaning your mortgage is technically invalid." The room went completely quiet. People looked at each other, suddenly understanding what this meant. Every homeowner might not actually own the right to use water on the property they thought was fully theirs. A woman in the back stood up. "Are you saying our homes aren't legally?" Before I could answer, Catherine slammed her hand on the podium. "This meeting is over. Everyone out. The board needs to discuss this privately." As people shuffled out, whispering nervously, a younger man touched my arm. "I'm David Chen. I just put my retirement savings into a lot in the new section. What happens to me?" I hadn't expected to face the human cost so directly. "I'm not trying to hurt regular people," I told him honestly. "This is about fixing a wrong." "Don't listen to her," Catherine hissed suddenly beside us. After everyone else left, she leaned close to my face. "You have no idea who you're messing with. I built Silver Lakes from nothing. Nobody takes it from me." Her threat hung in the air between us as she stormed off, leaving me alone in the empty room. Through the windows, I could see clusters of worried homeowners in the parking lot. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "How did it go?" "They know now. Get ready for their next move," I typed back. What I didn't tell him was how shaken I felt. I had lit the fuse, but I wasn't sure if I was prepared for the explosion that would follow. These weren't just paper properties on a map, they were people's homes and dreams. But they had built those dreams on my grandmother's stolen rights. Someone would end up losing everything, and Catherine Prescott wasn't going to go down without a fight. I jerked awake to the sound of engines outside my grandmother's ranch house. Floodlights blazed through the windows. I stumbled to the porch to find 3 black SUVs with Silver Lake Security painted on their doors parked in a row, blocking my driveway. Men in tactical-style uniforms stood by the vehicles. One stepped forward, handing me a thick envelope. "Cease and desist, Lakes Homeowners Association," he said robotically. "You are ordered to withdraw all claims against the development or face legal action." I tore open the inside was a letter claiming my documents were forgeries and that I was attempting to extort the community. They demanded I pay $500,000 for damages to property values. "You can't be serious." The man shrugged. "Just delivering the message." None of them left. I tried to leave for breakfast in town, but discovered they had placed large concrete barriers across the end of my driveway overnight. "Sorry, ma'am," one guard said without looking sorry at all. "This access point hasn't been approved by the development committee. It's been closed for safety reasons." I was trapped. I called the sheriff's office but was told they couldn't help with a civil dispute and suggested I contact my attorney. My phone rang. Catherine's name flashed on the screen. I hadn't given her my number. "Good morning," when I answered. "Enjoying the peace and quiet? This is harassment," I said. "Actually, according to county zoning regulations, that driveway crosses a protected watershed area. We're within our rights to restrict access. You know those regulations are based on your fraud." She laughed. "Let me explain how this works. The county commissioner plays golf with my husband every Saturday. The building inspector's son-in-law works for my development company. The water authority supervisor lives in Silver Lakes." I felt my stomach drop as she continued. "By tomorrow, your ranch will be cited for at least 20 code violations. Your utilities might get shut off due to infrastructure updates. Local contractors won't return your calls because they know better than to cross me. That's illegal," I said. "Small-town reality," she replied. "You can't win this, but I'm reasonable. Drop your claims, sign over the disputed mineral rights, and this all goes away. I'll even throw in a generous payment for your This isn't about money," I told her. "It's always about money, dear. Think it over. You have until tomorrow." I stared at my phone, then at the security vehicles still parked outside. They weren't leaving. True to Catherine's word, by afternoon, a county inspector arrived to examine the ranch house. He found problems with everything: the wiring, the well system, the foundation. He handed me a list of violations that would cost hundreds of thousands to fix, all needed within 30 days. As he left, another truck arrived. Workers put up signs along my property line. "Future home of Silver Lakes Estates. Exclusive living coming soon." My water pressure dropped to nothing. When I called the utility company, they claimed there was maintenance work happening and couldn't say when it would be restored. I tried ordering groceries for delivery. The driver called to say he couldn't find my address, though delivery had never been a problem before. I was being isolated, step by step. That night, darkness, watching the security lights sweeping across the pastures where my grandmother's cattle had once grazed. Their bulldozers sat silent in the distance, waiting to continue destroying her legacy. My phone lit up with a message from Michael. "They filed a countersuit claiming your documents are fraudulent. Court date set for 4 months from now. They'll keep pressuring to resume construction in the meantime. 4 months, the houses would be half finished. The damage would be done." I scrolled through my contacts, looking for anyone who might help. A name caught my eye: Lisa Martinez, a reporter for the regional news network. We'd gone to college together. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but maybe. As I considered calling her, headlights appeared on the long driveway. A car carefully maneuvered around the concrete barriers and approached the house. I tensed, wondering what new trouble Catherine was sending my way. The car parked, and a familiar figure stepped out: Robert Green, the HOA legal counsel who had examined my documents at the meeting. I shouldn't be, glancing back at the security vehicles in the distance. "Why are you here?" I asked. He pulled out a flash drive from his pocket. "Because what she's doing isn't right. I've been the association's attorney for 5 years. There are things you should see." I invited him inside, away from watching eyes. At my kitchen table, he opened his laptop and showed me financial records, meeting minutes, and emails. "Catherine and the board have been using HOA funds like their personal piggy bank," he explained. "Special assessments that disappear, contracts that go to family members, reserve funds that get invested in side businesses. Why show me this? I asked. Because I'm not the only unhappy homeowner, Robert said. Many of us are tired of her control and corruption. When you showed up with those mineral rights documents, it was the first time I've seen her truly frightened. He pointed to us. Look at these special assessments from last year. Every homeowner paid $5,000 for water infrastructure upgrades. The actual work cost a quarter of that amount. The rest vanished. That's theft, I said. Robert nodded. And there's more. The property owners in Silver Lakes, they don't know about the water rights issue. Catherine has been hiding it for years. People who've tried to sell their homes have had mysterious last-minute problems with closing, always resolved by paying extra fees to companies connected to the board. As we talked, my phone buzzed with texts from numbers I didn't recognize. We support you against Catherine. The Johnsons, 155 Silver Lake Drive. She fined us for installing solar panels without approval. Can we help? Stephen's family. Our children's trashed without notice. We want to join your fight. The Wilsons. Robert smiled slightly. I may have shared your number with a few friends. For the first time I felt hope. Catherine had power, connections, and money. But she had also made enemies, many of them. We need a plan, I said. And I think I know where to start. As Robert left, carefully driving past the security vehicles, I watched a light rain begin to fall on the half-built houses in the distance. Catherine thought she was punishing me into submission. Instead, she had just helped me find the allies I needed to win. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, I would stop playing defense. My grandmother always said, the best defense isn't just standing your ground, it's showing others they're standing on quicksand. Catherine had final pieces I needed. My water was still shut off. The electricity followed this morning. I stood in my grandmother's kitchen, looking at spoiled food in the warm refrigerator. Catherine Prescott thought she could bully me off my own land by making life unbearable. She had another thing coming. I grabbed my head out. If Catherine wanted war, I needed an army. The first person I visited was Mr. Callahan, who answered his door in a weathered cowboy hat. They shut off your utilities, he growled. That's criminal harassment. So is falsifying mineral rights agreements, I replied. But Catherine has friends in local government. I need to know who else might stand against the HOA with us. Mr. Callahan. Well now, you're talking. He gave me 20 names. Families who'd been fined for the wrong fence height. Elderly couples threatened with liens for having grandchildren visit too long. A single dad who couldn't afford the $1. $200 fee for putting up a basketball hoop for his kids. I spent the entire Silver Lakes homes throughout the community. At first, people were afraid to talk, but when I showed them my evidence and the forensic report, something changed. Fear turned to anger. Maria Jensen, whose garden had been ripped out, invited me in for coffee. Catherine made us remove our vegetable garden because produce gardens decreased property values, she said, hands shaking with frustration. We got a $1,500 fine. My husband is on disability already. The Patel family $1,000 fighting the HOA over their solar panels. The Thompsons couldn't park their boat in their own driveway. Every house had to look exactly the same, perfect and sterile. It's not just the rules, Jason Rodriguez explained while his wife nodded. It's how they enforce them. Catherine has her security team photographing violations. Some people get warnings, others get immediate fines. There's no consistency. By sunset, I talked to 32 families, all with similar stories, all afraid of Catherine Prescott. I picked up my phone and called Michael, my attorney. Can we legal action lawsuit with all these homeowners? I asked. Absolutely, he replied. But what about their property values? That's where it gets interesting, I said. I'm going to need the community center for a meeting tomorrow night. Michael laughed. They'll never let you use it. They don't control it. I do, according to my water rights, remember. The next day, I printed 300 flyers. Emergency community meeting. Your home may be at risk. I included copies of the forensic report. As darkness fell, the community center filled beyond capacity. Over 120 families showed up. People stood against walls when the chairs ran out. Catherine arrived last, pushing through the crowd, her face twisted with rage. This meeting is unauthorized, she shouted. Everyone needs to leave immediately. Or what? Maria Jensen stood up. Haven't you taken enough from us already? The room erupted in applause. I walked to the front, holding up my hands for quiet. I didn't come here to cause trouble, I began. I came because my grandmother's rights were stolen. But after meeting all of you, I realized I'm not the only victim. For the next hour, residents shared stories of HOA abuse. Tears flowed, voices shook with emotion. Catherine sat stiffly in the back, tapping furiously on her phone. Here's what I prepared when everyone had spoken. We file a class action lawsuit against Silver Lake's HOA. Together, we negotiate new agreements that protect everyone. We create a fair system with transparent finances and reasonable rules. You can't do that, Catherine shouted. These homes are bound by contract to Silver Lake's HOA. I held up the agreement. Contracts based on fraudulent documents aren't enforceable, Miss Prescott, but I'm not here to take anyone's home. I'm here to fix what's broken. The vote was over. 102 families joined the lawsuit on the spot. As people filed out, energized and hopeful, Robert Green approached me privately. There's something else you should know, he whispered, glancing nervously at Catherine across the room. The HOA insurance policy, it won't cover fraud. If this goes to court, board members are personally liable. I patted his shoulder. Would you be willing to testify about the financial irregularities? He nodded. I'll bring the records tomorrow morning. Catherine stormed over, pointing her finger in my face. You've made a catastrophic mistake. By this time tomorrow you'll wish you'd never heard of Silver Lakes. Is that a threat, Miss Prescott? It's a promise. I have the district attorney, the sheriff, and 3 judges in my contact list. This little rebellion. What she didn't know was that I'd invited a reporter from the regional news network to sit quietly in the back of the meeting. Every word had been recorded, every threat documented. As Catherine slammed the door behind her, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Water rights survey results came in. You won't believe what we found. I smiled. Catherine thought she had all the power, but Grandma always said the most powerful weapon isn't force, it's truth. And tomorrow, the truth about Silver Lake's HOA would be headline news. I woke up to patrol cars surrounding my grandmother's ranch house. Through the window, I spotted Catherine Prescott standing next to a uniformed officer. Time to face the sheriff, announced as I opened the door. You're trespassing on private property. I smiled calmly. Actually, Sheriff Jackson, I believe you'll find I'm the legal property owner. I handed him a folder containing the original mineral rights agreements and my grandmother's deed. These Catherine snapped. They have, actually. A woman stepped forward from a car I hadn't noticed. Angela Rodriguez, county clerk's office. We pulled the original records last night, after receiving some concerning reports about document tampering. Catherine's face. What reports? I gestured toward the ranch house. Perhaps we should discuss this inside. Coffee's ready. 20 minutes later, my kitchen table held an unexpected gathering. The sheriff, the county clerk, Michael, my attorney, and Catherine, whose perfect makeup couldn't hide her growing panic. The original mineral rights were improperly modified in 2002, Angela explained, spreading documents across the table. This entire area, including Silver Lake's properties, was built on land where the Matthews family retained all water rights. The sheriff with a problem. Not a problem, Michael said quietly. We have evidence suggesting the modifications were deliberate and fraudulent. Preposterous. Catherine slammed her hand on the table. This is a scheme to extort money from hardworking homeowners. Speaking of mud, sliding a folder toward the sheriff. Robert Green provided these financial records yesterday. 5 years of Silver Lake's HOA accounts. As the sheriff flipped through the pages, his expression darkened. Miss Prescott, can you explain why $3.2 million in homeowner dues was transferred to Lakeview Management LLC, registered to your brother-in-law? That's our legitimate management company, she replied stiffly. Along with charge the HOA for services, landscaping, security, maintenance, legal services, all going to businesses owned by your family members, I added. The sheriff, Miss Prescott, we're going to need you to come down to the station. This is absurd. Do you know who I am? My husband golfs with Judge Richardson every week. As the sheriff ran out, Angela turned to me. What happens now to all those homes? I have no intention of disrupting anyone's life, I assured her. But the development needs to stop until we can establish proper water rights agreements for all. By afternoon, construction had completely halted. Local news vans lined the street outside the ranch house. My phone rang constantly with calls from worried homeowners. I called an emergency town hall meeting for that evening. The local high school auditorium was the only space large enough. Nearly 500 people packed the room. Existing homeowners, construction workers now without jobs, county officials, and curious onlookers. Fear and anger filled the air. I took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. My name is Morgan Matthews. This was my grandmother's ranch. I didn't come here looking for trouble. I came to honor her legacy. Shouts interrupted me. What about our homes? We'll lose everything. My retirement is tied up in that house. I raised my hands. Please, I'm not here to take anything from you. In fact, I want to offer a solution that benefits everyone. The room quieted slightly. I continued. First, all existing homeowners will receive proper legal water rights at no cost to you. No one will lose their home. Murmurs of relief. Second, the new development will be redesigned to preserve the natural watershed that my grandmother protected. These aren't just water sources, they're critical environmental resources and natural flood protection for the entire valley. I clicked to showing Grandma's environmental studies. These watersheds feed 3 protected habitats. Building on them as planned isn't just wrong, it's environmentally destructive. A man stood. I put my life savings into a lot in the new section. What happens to my investment? Fair question. We're establishing a property exchange program. Anyone who purchased in the protected area can swap for an equivalent lot in the redesigned development. No one loses their investment. For the next hour, I outlined my vision. A community that balanced homes with nature. Transparent governance. Reasonable rules. Fair fees that actually went toward community improvements. Toward the end, Maria Jensen took the microphone. I've lived under Catherine's rules for 6 years. I couldn't plant vegetables. I couldn't install solar panels. My kids couldn't have a treehouse because it violated the aesthetic guidelines. She looked around the room. Is that really the community we want? By the time we had over 350 signatures supporting the new Pine Valley Community Association. Even some of Catherine's former allies joined, including Robert, who agreed to help establish transparent financial practices. The next 6 months weren't easy. Catherine hired expensive lawyers who tried every trick to keep control, but the evidence was too strong. She eventually accepted a plea deal on the financial fraud charges. Today, I'm sitting on my grandmother's porch, watching children ride bikes past houses with gardens of all kinds. Community vegetable plots, where Maria's tomatoes grow tall, are buzzing with neighbors sharing gardening tips. Behind me, Grandma's ranch house has been transformed into our community center. Classes, meetings, and celebrations happen daily. The watersheds are protected by a conservation covenant with nature trails and educational signs, explaining the importance of each ecosystem. Mr. Cat porch, handing me a cup of coffee. Your grandmother would be so proud, he says, pointing to where construction has finally resumed on the redesigned development. Smaller homes, more green space, water conservation systems in every building. I found something while cleaning out her desk, I tell him, pulling out a faded notebook. Grandma's journal from 25 years ago. She fought the original developers back then too, when they first tried to claim these water rights. Mr. Callahan smiles. She always said you were just like her, stubborn as a mule when fighting for what mattered. In the distance, a blue heron rises from the protected watershed, soaring above homes where people now live in harmony with the land. Sometimes the strongest claim isn't about owning something, it's about protecting what matters for everyone. Catherine's HOA tried to steal my grandmother's water rights, but instead, they gave me something far more valuable, a community united by justice and respect for the land.